Chapter 6. 2 hours later, Detective Bree Stone drove into the Tony West Langley neighborhood of McLean, Virginia. "What do you think Tommy had on his laptop?" asked Detective Kurt Muller, the older man sitting beside her in the passenger seat. He was working the ends of his silver mustache so they held in tight curls. "Something that got the laptop stolen, and maybe also got him killed," Bree said, thinking back to the meeting they'd just left and the briefing they'd gotten from Alex and Sampson. There was a lot to absorb, but they were sure that the fast-running burglar had taken McGrath's computer and probably his backup drive from his home office. They had DC Metro's IT experts going over McGrath's work files, and there was a detective looking at every security camera feed within 6 blocks of the Whole Foods. Another top investigator was searching through all of McGrath's old cases to see if he had done anything that might warrant assassination. Alex had asked Bree and Muller to pay a visit to McGrath's estranged wife at her home in McLean, Virginia. Alex and Sampson would focus on Adita Kravick and Terry Howard. "Heard Howard's sick," Muller said. "Hate to think that he was involved," Bree said as they drove. "Me too," Muller said. "He used to be a friend of mine." She slowed, spotted the mailbox with the address she was looking for, and turned into the long driveway of a sprawling Cape house with gray cedar shake siding and a lushly landscaped yard. "This must have cost a small fortune," Bree said. $1.75 million, Muller said. "I checked before we left." "How does a chief of detectives afford a place like this?" "Wife's money," Muller said. "She came with the trust fund." That had Bree chewing the inside of her cheek. Parking, she said. "How come I didn't know that?" "I take it you were never invited out here for a dinner or a barbecue." "I've never been here before in my life." "I have," Muller said, and he climbed out. Bree followed him as he crossed the driveway. When they were 20 feet shy of the door, it opened, and a tall, distinguished-looking man in a well-cut suit exited, carrying a briefcase. The man stopped when he saw them. A woman in her 40s appeared in the doorway behind him. She had sandy blonde hair, a tennis-honed body, puffy red eyes, and a tortured expression on her face. "Kurt," she called to Muller in a wavering voice, "I'm crushed to see you like this." Muller nodded, said, "I am too, Vivian." The well-dressed man half-turned toward her. Vivian McGrath gestured to the man absently. "Kurt, this is Lance Gordon, my attorney. Detective Muller used to work for Tommy Lance." "We both did," Bree said. "I'm sorry for your loss, all of you," Gordon said. "Vivian, call any time if you have questions." "I appreciate it, Lance," she said, "really." The lawyer pursed his lips and nodded before walking past Muller and Bree. When he went by, Bree noticed an oddly familiar odor trailing him. Weirdly sweet, but she couldn't place it. Bree and Muller went to McGrath's widow. Muller said, "Got to be hard, Viv, even after everything." Bree forgot about Gordon and focused on Vivian as tears leaked from her eyes and she swallowed against emotion. "It's true," she choked out. "I'd already lost him, but it's just—" Muller patted her shoulder awkwardly, said, "Viv, this is Detective Bree Stone. We're part of a task force working on Tom's case. Alex Cross is leading." Vivian smiled weakly. "Nothing but the best for Tommy." Then she put a well-manicured hand on Bree's arm and said, "He talked of you often, Detective Stone. Please come inside. Can I offer you coffee?" "Please," Bree said, and Muller nodded. She led them through rooms that could have been featured in Architectural Digest and ushered them into a kitchen with exposed beam ceilings, cream-colored cabinets, and a maroon stove. Gleaming copper pots hung over a prep station. Every surface was spotless. Every knife and utensil looked in its place, so much so that it felt sterile to Bree. There were no pictures taped to the fridge, no stacks of mail on the counters, and no dishes in the sink. Sit, Vivian said, gesturing to stools at a breakfast counter. "What do you want to know? How can I help?" "We understand you and Tom were getting divorced," Bree said. "We'd separated, yes," she sniffled. "What would you like? Espresso? A latte?" Bree said, "Espresso would be fine." "Latte," Muller said, and he touched his mustache. In one corner of the kitchen was an espresso maker that Bree figured would have set her back a month's pay. Vivian pushed a button, and the machine steamed and hissed and spilled black coffee that smelled like heaven. When Vivian set the cup and saucer down in front of her, Bree said, "The separation." McGrath's widow hardened, crossed her arms, and said, "What about it?" "Tom's idea?" Muller asked. "Or yours?" "Tom never told you?" Assume we know nothing, Bree said. I suggested the separation, but it was because of Tom, she said forlornly. I'd always believed we could make it work. He was so unlike anyone who ran in my social circles. But we worked for 17 years, and then, for reasons I'm still trying to figure out, we just didn't anymore. She broke down sobbing. Chapter 7. Bree took a breath, feeling more frustrated than sympathetic. When Vivian got control again, Bree said, "Can you be more specific about how it wasn't working?" She wiped at her eyes with a tissue, glanced at Muller, and then said, "He stopped touching me, if you must know. And it felt like he had secrets. He kept a second phone, spent money he didn't have. I figured he had a mistress." Bree didn't comment on that. "Did Tommy have a mistress?" Muller asked. "I don't know," Vivian said. "I think so. You tell me. I never hired anyone to look, I mean. But I could see Tom was unhappy with me. So 3 months ago, I asked him if he still loved me. He wouldn't answer the question. I asked him if he wanted a separation, a divorce, and he said that was up to me." "If you wanted to stay with him, why did you suggest the separation?" Bree asked. Vivian wiped at her eyes, pulled herself up straight, and gazed at Bree evenly. "I thought it might knock some sense into him, make him come back to me." "I gather he didn't," Muller said. She looked humiliated. "No." "Had you filed for divorce?" Bree asked. "No." "Why not?" "Because I still loved him," she said. "I hoped—" "Must have hurt," Bree said. "It hurt. It demeaned, and it saddened me more than you can imagine, Detective Stone," she said with a stricken expression. "And angered you?" Vivian looked right at Bree. "Of course." "Enough to kill him?" Muller asked. "Never. We used to watch those television shows like 48 Hours and Dateline, where there's always one spouse killing another. We always said we couldn't understand that. If the marriage wasn't working, you left, found a way to be friends, or not, and just move on." "How did your marriage work financially?" Bree asked. "There was a prenup, if that's what you're asking," Vivian said. "The day we married, 17 years ago, Tom knew he'd get nothing if we divorced." "He angry about that?" Muller asked. Vivian snorted. "Quite the opposite. Tommy was fine with the agreement, proud of it, in fact. He said it proved he'd married me for—" Tears welled in her eyes again. She took a deep breath. "He liked the personal independence it represented, and the self-reliance." "How did your lives mix?" Bree asked. "I mean, you're out here leading a country club life, while Tom was in the city doing a dangerous job." Vivian's face went through a slow flurry of emotions. Resistance, then consideration, and finally acceptance. Her shoulders slumped. "The more I think about it, Detective Stone, the more I see that Tom and I did live in separate worlds, right from the beginning. Here we had a safe, fairy tale life, but out there in D.C., on the streets, well, Tom liked to fight dragons. Being a cop made him feel alive, and all I could feel when I went into the city with him was fear." Muller said, "He was killed with a younger woman." "I heard that," she said. "Who was she?" "Edita Kravik, early 30s, studying law at American University. Damned attractive." Vivian took the news that the woman her estranged husband had died with was in her early 30s and damned attractive like a 1-2 punch. "Was she his mistress?" she asked in a strained voice. "We don't know," Bree said. "He never mentioned that name to you?" "Never." "Just for the record, Miss McGrath," Bree said, "where were you at 7:20 this morning?" Vivian looked at her incredulously. "You honestly think I could kill Tom?" "We have to ask, Viv," Muller said. "It's part of the job. You know the drill." "I was probably taking a shower." "Anyone see you?" "I should hope not. I've been living alone." "Who was the first person you saw this morning?" "Catalina Monroe, my massage therapist. I had an 8 o'clock. You have a way we can contact her?" McGrath's widow rattled off a phone number, then said, "You know who you should be looking at?" "Tell us," Bree said. "Terry Howard," Vivian said with spite in her voice. "He threatened Tom on multiple occasions." "Cross is working that angle," Muller said. "Good, good. I was afraid it might be, well, you know." "Are you planning a memorial?" Bree asked. Vivian seemed more confused than ever. She looked down and whispered, "Is that something I'm supposed to do? I don't know if Tommy would even want me to be involved." Muller said, "I suppose you make that decision by first taking a moment to honor the good times you had with Tommy, figure out what they meant to you. If Tommy's love during those years was enough, you do it. You see him buried. And if those years of love weren't enough, you don't. If you decide not to do anything, I'll take care of the arrangements, Bree said. McGrath's widow looked around as if in a daze, her chin trembling, and then said, "No, Kurt's right. Honoring our love and burying the husband Tommy was is the least I can do." The dam burst and she wept. It's the only thing I can do for him now. Chapter 8. Edita Kravik's apartment in Columbia Heights looked like it had been decorated right out of the Sundance catalog. High-end furniture, nicely framed prints on the wall, and given the place's location, the rent had to be $2,000, maybe $3,000 a month. That was strange, I thought, because law students were usually surviving. Edita evidently did quite well with the whole Level 2 certified coach thing. The kitchen was stocked with culinary gadgetry, and there were fine wines chilling in the fridge, along with gourmet cheeses and spreads. Nice crystal in the cabinets, but no photographs anywhere in the living area. Nothing that suggested Edita Kravik's private life, nothing that could tell us more about her. The apartment had 3 bedrooms. The smallest one had been turned into an office. There was a business phone with several lines and an open laptop on the desk. "I'll look here," I said. "I'll take the bedrooms," Sampson said. Just as in the living area, there was nothing personal on the shelves or the walls, just a basic desk, a backless chair, and 2 wooden filing cabinets. I tugged on the drawers of one and found them locked. The top drawer of the other slid open, revealing standard office supplies. The next drawer down was full of files. I looked through them, found out that she owned a late-model Audi A5, and that she vacationed in the Caymans, a lot, as in 3 times in the prior year. But there was nothing that gave me a clear idea of how she'd pay for it all. I was thinking she'd have to have an income of over $100,000 to live like this. Did Level 2 certified coaches make that kind of money? If so, maybe I was in the wrong business. I thought about breaking the lock on the first cabinet, but decided to take a look at the computer first. To my surprise, when I ran my finger across the touchpad, the screen lit right up and showed me the desktop. Several different applications were running. One was Edita's law school email account. I sat down and scanned through the emails, seeing nothing from Tom McGrath. Most of the messages were to and from professors and classmates. One classmate, Johnny Boy 5, had sent 6 emails to her in the 18 hours preceding her murder. "Really?" read one sent around 10:30 the previous night. "Standing me up again? This was your meat, remember?" I did a search of her entire inbox, looking for all emails from Johnny Boy 5. There were more than 100, going back 18 months. I rearranged them so they were in chronological order and read a tale of growing obsession. Johnny Boy 5 had evidently been smitten with Edita Kravik from the get-go, and he was not shy about saying so. Though she seemed to flirt with him at times, for the most part she did nothing to encourage him. For the first year, she'd managed to keep Johnny Boy 5 at bay, but after that, his tone became irate and then depressed. "I don't know what's come over me," Johnny Boy 5 had written back in March. "I'm terrified that I won't see you again, Edita. I know it's irrational, but there it is. I can't shake this dark, dark feeling that I'm going to lose you somehow, that something bad is going to happen to you, that you're never going to see the real me, and that you'll never understand how much I truly care about you." Edita wrote back, "This is no good, Johnny. Go away, or I get a restraining order. A 3rd year told me how to do it." For 3 weeks after that, there was no contact between Miss Kravik and Johnny Boy 5. Then he emailed her again. "I know what you are, Edita, what you do out of class." No return email. No follow-up for months. 3 weeks before Edita was murdered, however, Johnny Boy 5 wrote her again. "Who is he? The big meathead who threatened to break my face? Really? This is how things are between us? What if I just posted on Facebook about you and the life you don't want anyone to know about? Will that do it?" 2 weeks passed. "Sorry for the rants," Johnny Boy 5 wrote. "God, I read back through some of it, and that wasn't me, Edita. The doctor put me on this asthma medicine called Montelukast, and I had a rare but bad side effect, which put me in a dark way. But I've returned to the living. Study group starting up again. Love to have you back, of course. No worries about anything else. Everyone's got skeletons in the closet, am I right?" Edita did not respond. Every day after that, leading up to the day before her death, Johnny Boy 5 wrote, chidingly, in worry, in despair, and in anger. "In so many ways, meeting you was the ruin of my life," he'd written just 2 days before she died. Everything I built was reduced to rubble the moment I met you. Ruin deserves ruin, Edita. Ruin deserves ruin. Obsession has been a staple in the recipe book of murder since time immemorial. Others developed hatred as the basis of their obsession. This was especially true of organized serial killers. They ritualized their killings, taking their rage out on surrogates for the people who'd spawned their hatred. But love can be the basis of obsession too, especially if one party or the other is spurned. You see that kind of gradual tick-tick change in a person as he goes from being smitten to being crazy in love to when he's rejected, feeling sad, then worthless, then angry, then enraged, and then he grabs a gun because if I can't have the object of my desire, no one will. Was that what had happened with Johnny Boy 5? Had he taken the romantic spiral toward homicide and killed Edita and Tommy McGrath, the big guy who threatened to break his face? Or was that someone else? Samson walked in. "I got something you need to see." "Me too," I said, getting up. "She's got a stalker." "That fits," he said. He turned and led me into her bedroom. Big 4-poster bed, matched linens, new dresser, nice mirror, a walk-in closet with racks bulging with clothes and shelves holding dozens of beautiful shoes. There were built-in drawers at the far end of the closet. Samson had pulled 2 of them open. The first was filled with fine lingerie. The second featured a wide selection of sex toys and lubricants. "So she had a kinky side," I said. "So what?" He pushed shut the 2 drawers and opened the ones directly below. I took both in at a glance and said, "Oh, well, that changes things." "Damn sure it does," Samson said, looking into the right drawer, which was filled with hardcore S&M equipment. I was more interested in the drawer on the left, the deeper one, the one filled with stacks and stacks of banded $50 bills.